UFC 291 is this Saturday, and this is my full card predictions and research. I am so excited for this card. We have an absolute treat in store for us. So the first matchup we have is Miranda Maverick versus Priscila Cachoeira. I probably butchered those names, but that's okay. So Miranda Maverick lately has lost a few fights that she should be winning, and Priscila has won a few fights that she should have lost. You got Miranda Maverick, who's 2-3 in her last 5. Priscila is 4-1 in her last 5. So momentum is on the side of Priscila. She's not the best fighter, to be honest. You've seen her fight. She has to cheat to win in almost every bout she has. You can see her striking differential is awful. It's 4.68 significant strikes landed and 7.85 taken. So she goes in there, she gets the shit kicked out of her for the most part. But that being said, she has been able to go in there and get some wins lately. But in this one, Miranda Maverick really needs this, right? A few years ago, you would look at Miranda Maverick as one of the biggest prospects in women's MMA, at least in that division. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch. So Miranda really does need this one. She actually fought as recently as early June, so I believe she's likely in very good shape, rolling from one camp to the next one. So I do expect her to really go in here and fight for her career. I think she is the more talented fighter. She has more tools in her tool bag to win. She's got a better striking differential than Priscila, and she actually knows how to take girls down and go in and get a submission. And that's where Priscila is shown to be very weak. Anytime she gets taken down lately, she sort of just stays there and doesn't understand how to get back up without cheating. We saw that against Jillian Robertson. So I believe that's likely the game plan for Miranda, is to play around striking a little bit. She likely will have some success there, but I think she's going to want to get this fight to the ground and get a submission, and I do think she's going to be able to do that, or just get dominant wrestling and some ground and pound and win a decision like that. I'm not going to be betting this fight personally, just because women's MMA has done me horribly as of late, but I do think Miranda Maverick's going to get this one done. If she doesn't, her career is in jeopardy, because I really don't know where she's going to go from here. Gun to my head and pick wise, we are going to start this off with Miranda Maverick. Moving on up, we have Matthew Semelsburger versus Uros Medic. Now, if you don't know who Uros is, this guy is a crazy prospect. He's got some of the craziest striking differential in the UFC, and that's because he goes in there like a Beyblade and tries to take somebody out in the very first round. Very rarely does he actually go past the first round, which is why his striking stats are so crazy. He lands 8.14 significant strikes, and he only takes 3.76 with a 66% striking accuracy. So you can see his stats versus Matthew. He is more accurate, he lands more often, he gets hit less. But Matthew has much more experience going the distance, going through hard-fought wars. He wins some, he loses some. He's looked pretty good as of late despite his last loss. And the reason Semelsburger is the favorite here is just because of how little experience Uros has going past the first round. So I imagine the odds makers are looking at this like, if Uros doesn't get Semelsburger out in the first round, which is possible but unlikely because of how tough Semelsburger has shown to be, then it could potentially go south for Uros as he gets tired and potentially gasses out. So I can understand the odds. I would say it should be a little bit closer to a 50-50, but I can see where they're coming from just with the lack of long experience. That being said though, we're taking the underdog here, boys. I'm going Uros Medic. I think he's going to go in there, not finish him in the first. I think it'll be a strong Uros round for the first, and I think he gets him out of there in the second round. Under 2.5 rounds isn't too bad of a bet on this one either, but Uros moneyline is good value there at the moment. I think it should be closer to a 50-50 fight, if not Uros slightly in the favor. He's a much better striker in my opinion from what he's shown. He just hasn't shown to go that long because he hasn't needed to. Everybody crumbles in front of him earlier. We shall see though. That's going to be a very awesome matchup. I can't wait to see how that goes. I think Uros is going to go in there and get the finish over Semelsburger, who's very tough and durable, and it's going to be a good breakout performance for Uros, put him on the map and start getting him some really good name value opponents in the UFC. Moving on up, we have CJ Vergera versus Vinicius Salvador. This is a great matchup. If you don't know, CJ Vergera is the guy who was running laps around his opponent in the last fight he had. He almost was finished that round, came back and beat the other guy because he was gassed. It was a crazy fight. I very much so enjoyed watching that one, and I think you can expect to see a similar type of matchup here. Vinicius has shown to be a very high-paced striker. He does have a negative striking differential. I think Vinicius is going to be just a little bit more calculated in this one because he is coming off of a loss. However, CJ has more experience at a higher level. CJ does have higher striking accuracy and a better striking differential. That combined with more experience, I can see why CJ is the favorite here, and I am going to be going CJ. But it is interesting, right? You have Vinicius, who pretty much finishes by KO everybody he goes in there and fights for all of his wins essentially, and he has the reach advantage, and he has the height advantage. Going to be an interesting fight, but I'm trusting CJ to tough it out, survive the early onslaught, and start chipping away. CJ probably loses round 1, but I think he's going to win round 2 and round 3 and edge out a win either late 3rd round finish or by decision 29-28. Moving on up, we have Jake Matthews versus Darrius Flowers. You'll see Darrius' stats are empty. That's because this is his UFC debut. He did have a good Contender Series win, which was very impressive. However, there's a difference in competition from Contender Series to UFC. You know, it is a difference. It can be a big difference going from the Contender Series to the UFC, especially against an opponent like Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews has never been at the top of the division, but he has fought a lot of times in the UFC. While Darrius does have more momentum, I can see why Jake Matthews is the favorite here. I am going to be picking Jake Matthews as well. I just think the experience and well-roundedness of Jake Matthews is going to be able to get him through the onslaught of Darrius Flowers early on and survive, because he has shown to have a very good chin, and he's not the type of guy to go in there and get chinned and knocked out right away, and the UFC debut jitter. So all of that combined, I think Jake Matthews is a fairly good bet. However, Darrius Flowers is that dude who could go in there and get a 1st round finish on Jake Matthews and just do a wild UFC debut, and now we all know his name, and now we're looking forward to his next fight. That's definitely a possibility here. He is that guy. I just think Jake Matthews is a little bit too much for a UFC debut. I expect him to lose this one, that is Darrius, but I think in his next fight, you got to watch out for this guy. I think he's going to come in here and do some good things in the UFC. I'm excited to see it. But for this one, we're going Jake Matthews. Moving on up, we have Roman Kopylov versus Claudio Ribeiro. I'm picking another underdog here. I'm going to be going with Claudio. When you look at the stats and you watch how these guys fight, I really don't understand why Roman is such a strong favorite. It doesn't make that much sense to me. Roman is 3-2 in his last 5. Claudio's 4-1 in his last 5. Roman hits 4.54 significant strikes and takes 3.96 a minute. Claudio does 4.22 landed and 2.39 taken, a better striking differential. Claudio also has better striking accuracy, more wins by KO, and the reach advantage, and more momentum, yet he's a plus 180 underdog. I know Roman has fought tougher competition. However, Roman hasn't fought a crazy good competition either. You know, it's not like he's been up there fighting the early top 15 guys, top 10 guys. He hasn't ever made it that high up there, and he is a good fighter. He's definitely not a bad fighter. I can understand him being a slight favorite in this matchup just due to the experience of competition. However, I just think this is a bad matchup for him. I see Claudio going in there, just outlanding him every single round, likely a 29-28 decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if Claudio goes in there and gets the finish as well. And moving on up, this is where the card starts to get very spicy. We have Derrick Lewis on the prelims as an underdog. That's where he's at right now. I kind of feel bad for him. Versus Marcos de Lima at minus 180. Guys, call me crazy. I'm taking Derrick Lewis in this matchup, guys. I know he's 1-4 in his last 5, and Marcos is 4-1 in his last 5, just complete polar opposites. But Derrick has been fighting the top of the division in heavyweight, whereas Marcos has not been fighting that level of competition. He's been fighting unranked opponents, essentially. And Marcos is not the guy to go in there and just take you down and wrestle hump you. He's also not the type of guy to go in there and blow you away with crazy striking speed and pace like Sergey did to Derrick. So I think this is a pretty good matchup for Derrick, to be honest. I know that Marcos has a better striking differential, but Derrick Lewis's strikes just hit a little bit different at heavyweight, right? Like every single one of his strikes has KO power. And I know that's technically true with most heavyweights, but Derrick is like another 30% above most heavyweights. So I see Marcos and Derrick going in there, engaging in a striking battle for the most part. You have Derrick Lewis fighting for his career in this fight. He has the reach advantage. He has way more experience at a high level in heavyweight. I think at plus 155, there's pretty good value there. And don't get me wrong, I know Marcos is a fairly good heavyweight prospect, but he's not a Tom Aspinall, he's not a Sergey Pavlovich, and he's not a Sergey Spivak, meaning he's going to just be very good at getting you to the ground and ending it that way. I think it's a good matchup for Derrick. I think it's a winnable one. I think it's a test from the UFC to say, man, if you don't get this one, like, I think that's it. And I think Derrick would know that as well. And I think he's going to go in there and get the finish first or second round. I mean, he knows that they're fighting at elevation. I don't think either fighter wants this to go the distance. They're going to go in there, swang and bang, and that's Derrick Lewis's game, baby. So we're going Derrick Lewis. Please don't let me down, but you're fighting for more than me in this career, buddy. You're fighting for your career. So I am so excited for this one. We're going Derrick Lewis. I believe in you, my brother. And moving on up to the headliner of the prelims, we have Gabriel Bonfim versus Trevin Giles. The other Bonfim bro lost in his last fight. That doesn't really matter anything for this, but it potentially could get in Gabriel's head a little bit. Coming in at minus 315. versus plus 260 on the Trevin Giles side. I think Gabriel is going to get this one done though. He honestly is a stud. He's very good striking, very good wrestling, takedowns, submission, with 11 wins coming by submission. Trevin Giles is no joke though. Trevin's got decent striking, better striking accuracy. He's well-rounded. He's got the reach advantage. He's got the UFC experience advantage, which is worth a lot. However, I just think Gabriel Bonfim is going to get this one done. I wouldn't go add Gabriel to all of your parlays though, especially at the odds you're getting him at. It's just not great value there. It should be a little bit more like a minus 180 in my opinion. However though, gun to my head, Gabriel Bonfim is going to get this one done. I see Gabriel going in there, engaging and striking just a little bit, but his first opportunity, I think he's going to get it to the ground, and I think his level of jiu-jitsu is higher than Trevin's. It's going to show in the matchup, and I wouldn't be surprised to see an early Gabriel submission, likely late round 1 or early to mid round 2 is how I see this one going. And here we are, guys, the first fight of the main event. If you guys are enjoying this video and you like my predictions and you like the stats and the research I show, smash that like button. We took a little hiatus from uploading, so all you guys who wants to like and comment and show some engagement on the video helps me a lot, helps me try to get back into the algorithm and, you know, continue growing the channel as we were before I had that strike. So Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland. We got Kevin Holland at minus 145, Michael Chiesa at plus 125. If you take a look at the stats here, and I mean, we all know this for the most part, Michael Chiesa is not the best striker. He's a jiu-jitsu specialist. His goal is to get it to the ground. He averages 3.39 takedowns per 15 minutes, which is very good. He's got a 54% takedown accuracy as well, 11 wins by submission. And Kevin Holland has shown to have some difficulties in defensive wrestling. He's no slouch on the ground once it actually gets there. He's got a very good jiu-jitsu game to him as well. He's the much better striker. I think that's fairly obvious. And Kevin Holland's been a lot more accurate in there, fighting against a lot of the top guys as of late, with Khamzat Chimaev, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I know he did lose both of those fights, but you learn something from every loss, and it makes you more eager to not take another loss again. It's always a little worrying when a fighter is half in, half out, and I do believe Michael Chiesa is there. I don't know if he actually genuinely believes he's trying to get to the championship belt right now as it stands. I know he's had some difficult injuries that he's gone through, so it's not entirely his fault. So the way I see this fight going, I think Michael Chiesa is obviously, they're going to have to strike a little bit. I think Kevin Holland is going to win those exchanges, and it's going to start to look pretty bad for Chiesa. Chiesa is going to be shooting takedowns. I expect him to fail a few, likely get one, maybe two. I don't see Kevin Holland just willingly sitting down on his back with Chiesa. Again, I know Chiesa is very good. He's a specialist. I just think Kevin Holland's going to be just good enough to get out of those exchanges, get back to the feet, and just piece him up on the feet. I think Kevin Holland's going to win this one by a finish. I think he's going to get a second round finish, actually. I just don't think Chiesa has it in him at this point, especially when you're fighting at elevation for your first fight back in 2 years against a guy who's incredibly accurate. I just think it's a tough matchup and a tough ask for Chiesa. I would understand people going on the side of that, because the specialist, when they want to go in there and submit somebody, it's really hard to stop that from the opposing side. I just think Kevin Holland is that dude. He's got 14 wins by KO, 6 by submission, which is an interesting stat to take note of. Maybe he can catch Chiesa in something. It has happened before to Chiesa by lesser grapplers. And I mean, the striking differential is insane. That should paint a very clear picture for how this will be on the feet. Chiesa does 1.88 landed, 1.67 absorbed. Holland lands 4.12 and takes 2.98. So I expect Kevin to bring the pace up, force Chiesa to fight at a higher pace than he's used to on the striking, force Chiesa into taking some takedown attempts. And like I said, he'll probably be successful in one or two. I think Kevin's going to stuff a lot of them, tire him out, especially at elevation, and get that finish round 2, maybe early round 3. So Kevin Holland for the win. Not necessarily a lock, but I will be adding Kevin to a few parlays, that's for sure. Moving on up, we have Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. This one's going to break my heart, guys, because Tony Ferguson is 0-5 in his last 5. Before that, he was on like a 12-fight winning streak. That's got to be the craziest up and down I've ever seen. And then you have Bobby Green, who's 2-1 in his last 5. This is a bad matchup for Tony Ferguson, guys. I think we all kind of know that. As much as we want Tony Ferguson to win this, I personally do. You know, I think he's got more variety in the strikes he throws. You know, he likes to mix in elbows, likes to mix in some weird kicks. It's still tough. I would still say Tony's shown to be pretty tough. I just think the momentum's a little bit too much. I don't know if he's all there. I know he never really was, but I really question his mentality and his mental IQ going into this fight. And Bobby Green didn't look very good against Jared Gordon. However, his style of fighting, I think, is just a bad matchup for Tony. While Tony does have the reach advantage, Bobby fights consistently at the end of his reach more. So I think that he's going to be able to control the reach battle in this one. The striking differential is fairly close, but Bobby has shown to be able to outland his opponents and take less at a better rate than Tony has, with 52% striking accuracy versus 45. Bobby also has 8 wins by submission, which is pretty surprising if you think about how he actually fights. So don't be surprised if you see Bobby maybe injuring Tony and going in for a club and sub type of deal. We all kind of understand the deal with this one, right? It's Tony on a massive skid, Bobby not doing incredibly well, but not anywhere near a Tony Ferguson level of deficit right now in terms of his last 5. And the actual stylistic matchup just... it's hard to deal with Bobby Green if you're not going to go try in there and land crazy one-punch hits that can knock him out, which Tony doesn't really do. And you're not going to go in there and try and take him down, which Tony doesn't really do all that often. And you're going to go in there and try and just outbox each other. I don't know. I just see Bobby Green outboxing him. I think Tony's tough enough to make it to the end, and I don't think he's going to get finished, but I see Bobby getting this one done. However, Tony Ferguson is an underdog attempt. It's not a bad take at all. Like, he definitely has the tools to do it. Bobby has shown to get caught a lot more than you'd expect against Jared Gordon. So if Tony Ferguson could go in there and take his punches like it's nothing, land some vicious elbows from the clinch, I could see him rocking Bobby and potentially getting the finish, and that would be such a good moment. I would be so happy. Even though I'm picking Bobby Green, I would be so happy for Tony Ferguson. It's definitely a dog or pass for me betting wise. I wouldn't lay a lot of money on Bobby Green just because there is that upset potential there. But gun to my head, if I'm betting my life on it, I would take Bobby Green over Tony Ferguson at this current point in time. Do you guys think Tony Ferguson can actually do it in this one? I think it's a winnable matchup compared to his last few fights, but he probably doesn't realistically. And moving on up, we have Steven Wonderboy Thompson versus Michel Pereira. Steven's at -165 versus +140. You got 3-2 in your last 5 versus 5-0 in his last 5. Steven is either 39 or 40 years old right now, but he doesn't really look like it when he fights. Like, he's still got his speed, he's still got his power that he had. He still throws a wide range of strikes and is able to manage the distance incredibly well. Him and Adesanya are essentially the best in the UFC at distance management and keeping them right where you want them. Michel Pereira is a pretty crazy dude to get in there with, man. He's not scared of a fight. He's going to bring it to Steven Thompson. Pereira's got a good, well-rounded game to him. He's not afraid to go in there, mix it up from striking and try and get a takedown, try and go for submission, which I definitely think he will try to do against Wonderboy. But that being said, he is more of a striker than he is a grappler. I know lately we saw Wonderboy have trouble with Gilbert Burns and just get held up against the cage the whole time, but Gilbert's is much more of a grappling specialist than Michel Pereira is, right? So it's a tough one, man. Like, this is one when I think about it, logically, Wonderboy should win. Just stylistically, I think this is a good matchup for Wonderboy, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see Michel Pereira, engage in striking a little bit, push him back towards the cage, sit him down. It's a 3-round fight. He only has to get him down essentially 2 times. As long as he's landing good damage in those takedowns as well, the judges are likely going to give it to him. It's a very scary matchup betting wise. Like, to me, it's a true coin flip because the age is a factor, right? If we were talking Steven Thompson from 4 years ago, I think he should be like a -300 favorite in this, but we're talking about a near 40-year-old guy, which, he hasn't shown the age lately, but eventually he is going to show that age, and it could be this fight. You never know. So I'm going to go Steven Thompson, but I will say I have such a bad feeling in my gut about this one that Michel Pereira is going to win. I'm just going to go with the logical pick still. I'm going to go Steven Thompson. It's going to be a good fight, though. I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm sure a lot of people are picking Michel Pereira just with momentum, youth, the striking differential is better, but it's a much different game to strike against other people than when you're versing Wonderboy. So I'm just banking on Wonderboy doing his thing, managing the distance, outlanding Michel Pereira. I think he's going to get this one done, but I do think it's going to be a split decision where it really could go either way, and I think Thompson's going to get this one done. And here we are at the co-main event. This is an absolute banger. I am incredibly excited for this one, and this is one I've gone back and forward on quite a lot in the last few days while I was researching this, just because Pereira, striking wise, he's better than Jan Blachowicz. I believe he has more power. I believe Jan leaves himself open to the left hook quite a lot. And if you overcompensate for that, or overcorrect rather, and you start raising your hand, now your body's open and that's where the liver is. So I could see Pereira going in there and either getting a left hook KO finish on the chin or a body shot to the liver and potentially dropping him like that. I just think Jan is a little bit too smart for that. He understands that that's where Alex can win. And I think Jan has more ways to win. He potentially could, chin Pereira and knock him out as well, right? I don't think that's incredibly likely, but I wouldn't rule it out as a possibility. Jan does have some really good power himself, and he has been a former kickboxer himself, never to the level of Pereira, but you take that with way more UFC top fight experience, more of a well-rounded game to him. He's got 9 wins by KO, 9 wins by submission. I think the game plan is fairly obvious for Jan, Engage in striking as little as possible. Take him down, wear him out, and maybe get a finish on him in round 3 if you can. You got to remember, this is a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight. Essentially, all Jan has to do is take Alex down 2 times, once per round for 2 of the rounds, and lay on him and elbow him in the head and do significant damage. I don't think Pereira, while he is training with Glover, has the grappling skill set and the anti-wrestling skill set to get himself back up. He's pretty good at not getting taken down, so I do see Jan having to really play around a little bit on the feet. Maybe, in the middle of a combination, go for it while Pereira's swinging. But once Pereira gets down, I think Jan's going to be able to have his way with him. And I think he's going to land some significant ground and pound. He's got the potential to chase a submission on Alex. And I just think that's the way this goes. But there is such a possibility that Alex just goes in there, takes Jan out, gets a KO first or second round, something crazy like that while he's really fresh. You got to remember, Alex isn't cutting that weight anymore. He's likely going to have a better chin. His camp has been more focused around the stylistic matchup versus, cutting weight. But Pereira was knocked out only a few months ago by Israel, and I know it wasn't like a crazy knockout, but it's still a pretty quick turnaround time. He hasn't had that much time to really work on his game other than just a few months, and I think that might be a little bit of a mistake for him, but I understand doing it with the timing of the division and everything. But yeah, I just think Jan has more ways to win in this one. It's a scary one to go, but I'm picking Jan Blachowics to get the win. He's going to have a win over Israel. He's going to have a win over Alex. He's going to be that guy, but he's not going to be champion. I don't know if he'll get the belt back, but this one, I do think he's going to win. But I would love to see him get KO'd. I would really love to see Pereira go in there, get a KO, fight Yuri for the belt next. That's the timeline I want to live in. I just don't think it's the timeline that's going to happen. So we'll see. A true 50-50 matchup, though. I won't be surprised either way it goes. And ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the final main event. The BMF title is on the line. We got Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. Justin's coming in at plus 125 while Dustin is minus 145. And I agree with those odds. Dustin did win their first fight. Dustin is better in his last 5. He's 4-1 in his last 5, whereas Justin is 3-2. Both of their recent losses are to Khabib and Charles Oliveira. So besides that, these guys have both gone in there and done what they needed to do against anybody else in the lightweight division. So it truly is just like a crazy matchup to have. Like, you have to really appreciate that they made this matchup. And I have no problem with it being for a BMF belt. I think it makes it a little more exciting. I think it's cool that they're keeping it alive. I don't want them to overdo it, but these two guys definitely deserve it. So let's dive into the actual stylistic matchup. If you're going to ask yourself, who has improved more since the last time they fought? And I think that's Justin Gaethje. I think he's shown to be able to still keep his force and his pressure and his damage and violence that he has, but in a much more calculated way. He's thinking about it a lot more. He's more conscious of the damage he's taken after he got finished by Alvarez and by Poirier. And since then, and really in his last few fights, he's gone in there and fought a very smart fight, even dating all the way back to the Tony Ferguson fight, right? Like, he's not just blindly running in there planning on taking more damage than the other guy can absorb. He's well aware that he can be beaten like that. Justin lands 7.38 significant strikes per minute, and he takes 7.66. And the ones that Justin lands, they just tend to do more than his opponents, just with timing, power, and just the way he is, right? Like, somebody might land a significant strike, but it's not always the same as Justin Gaethje's significant strike. And that's why Justin has 19 wins by KO. He very rarely ever goes to decision. I know he went to decision in his last one, but that's an anomaly. I don't think this fight's going to go to decision. I do think they're both incredibly good fighters, and it honestly is a real 50-50 fight for me. But I think I'm going to take Justin Gaethje in this one, boys. I think he's going to be able to redeem himself, potentially give us a trilogy match down the line. I just think that he's got more calculated. The last fight was so close up until the finish, and I see Dustin, he has improved. He's got better defensively. He's got really good counters. I just think Justin's improved much more. I think that's going to show in this fight. I think it's going to be very close, but I think Justin is going to edge this one out. I think he's going to get a late finish, likely around 4, maybe 5. I know everybody's saying there's no way this goes the distance, but when you have two guys that are that skilled, that tough, and need it and want it that bad, I wouldn't be surprised if this goes the decision. And I just think Justin's going to be able to win even on decision, but I wouldn't be surprised by any means if Dustin Poirier does what he does and he goes in there and finishes him again. I'm just banking on Gaethje, man. I think that this is his time. I think he's a little bit more deserving of the BMF belt even than Dustin Poirier, and I think he's going to get this one. So I am so excited for this either way, whether I'm right or wrong. I truly can't wait, but I am betting on Justin Gaethje at plus 125. I think that he's going to get this one done. We got an absolute treat of a card this weekend, boys. I cannot wait to watch this one. That's my picks and predictions predictions. Please let me know in the comment section below what you thought of the redone format here. I tried to make it so it doesn't take me quite as long to make these videos, because before I was spending like 12 hours for a video that would have like a 24-hour, 36-hour shelf life, you know. So I'm trying to find a good mix of really good content, but stuff that I can also stay consistent with. I want this to be my return to consistent content. I'm excited to pump out more content for you guys while I figure out my content schedule again here. But yeah, if you guys want to see me back, you want to see me continuing to make more videos, please drop a like and a comment. It helps me grow the channel, helps me get back in the algorithm. And most importantly, just, you know, keep on coming back, because we're back, baby. We're going to make some money. We're going to make some good calls. And I'm thinking we might start this one off with an ace. So that would be awesome. But either way, I will see you guys in the next one.